Embrace reality and deal with it. There is nothing more important than understanding how reality works and how to deal with it. The state of mind you bring to this process makes all the difference. I've found it helpful to think of my life as if it were a game in which each problem I face is a puzzle I need to solve. By solving the puzzle, I get a gem in the form of a principle that helps me avoid the same sort of problem in the future. Collecting these gems continually improves my decision-making, so I'm able to ascend to a higher level and higher levels of play in which the game gets harder and the stakes become even greater. All sorts of emotions come to me while I'm playing, and those emotions can either help me or hurt me. If I can reconcile my emotions with my logic and only act when they're aligned, I make better decisions. Learning how reality works, visualizing the things I want to create, and then building them out is incredibly exciting to me. Stretching for big goals puts me in a position of failing and needing to learn and come up with new inventions in order to move forward. I find it exhilarating to be caught up in the feedback loop of rapid learning, just as a surfer loves riding a wave, even though it sometimes leads to crashes. Don't get me wrong, I'm still scared of crashes, and I still find them painful. But I keep the pain in perspective, knowing that I will get through these setbacks and that most of my learning will come from reflecting on them. Just as long-distance runners push through the pain to experience the pleasure of runner's high, I have largely gotten past the pain of my mistake-making and instead enjoy the pleasure that comes with learning from it. I believe that with practice you can change your habits and experience the same mistake learner's high. Principle 1.7. Pain plus reflection equals progress. There is no avoiding pain, especially if you're going after ambitious goals. Believe it or not, you are lucky to feel that kind of pain if you approach it correctly, because it is a signal that you need to find solutions so you can progress. If you can develop a reflective reaction to psychic pain that causes you to reflect on it rather than avoid it, it will lead to your rapid learning and evolving. After seeing how much more effective it is to face the painful realities that are caused by your problems, mistakes, and weaknesses, I believe you won't want to operate any other way. It's just a matter of getting in the habit of doing it. Most people have a tough time reflecting when they are in pain, and they pay attention to other things when the pain passes, so they miss out on the reflections that provide the lessons. If you can reflect well while you're in pain, which is probably too much to ask, great. But if you can remember to reflect after it passes, that's valuable too. I created a pain button app to help people do this, which I'll describe in the appendix. The challenges you face will test and strengthen you. If you're not failing, you're not pushing your limits. And if you're not pushing your limits, you're not maximizing your potential. Though this process of pushing your limits, of sometimes failing and sometimes breaking through, and deriving benefits from both your failures and your successes, is not for everyone. If it is for you, it can be so thrilling that it becomes addictive. Life will inevitably bring you such moments, and it will be up to you to decide whether you want to go back for more. If you choose to push through this often painful process of personal evolution, you will naturally ascend to higher and higher levels. As you climb above the blizzard of things that surrounds you, you will realize that they seem bigger than they really are when you are seeing them up close, that most things in life are just another one of those. The higher you ascend, the more effective you become at working with reality to shape outcomes toward your goals. What once seemed impossibly complex becomes simple.
Understand that a great manager is essentially an organizational engineer. Great managers are not philosophers, entertainers, doers, or artists. They are engineers. They see their organizations as machines and work assiduously to maintain and improve them. They create process flow diagrams to show how the machine works and to evaluate its design. They build metrics to light up how well each of the individual parts of the machine, most importantly the people, and the machine as a whole are working. And they tinker constantly with its designs and its people to make both better. They don't do this randomly. They do it systematically, always keeping the cause and effect relationships in mind. And while they care deeply about the people involved, they cannot allow their feelings for them or their desire to spare them discomfort to stand in the way of the machine's constant improvement. To do otherwise wouldn't be good for either the individuals on the team or the team that the individuals are a part of. Of course, the higher up you are in an organization, the more important vision and creativity become, but you still must have the skills required to manage and orchestrate well. Some young entrepreneurs start with the vision and creativity and then develop their management skills as they scale their companies. Others start with management skills and develop vision as they climb the ladder. But like great musicians, all great managers have both creativity and technical skills, and no manager at any level can expect to succeed without the skill set of an organizational engineer.
It seems to me that the personal evolutionary process, in other words, the looping that I described in the last chapter, takes place in 5 distinct steps. First, have clear goals. Second, identify and don't tolerate the problems that stand in the way of you achieving your goals. Third, accurately diagnose the problems to get at their root causes. Fourth, design plans that will get you around those problems. And fifth, do what's necessary to push those designs through to completion. Together, these 5 steps make up a loop. Let's look at this process more granularly. First, you have to pick what you're going after, in other words, your goals. Your choice of goals will determine your direction. As you move toward them, you will encounter problems. Some of those problems will bring you up against your own weaknesses. How you react to the pain that causes is up to you. If you want to reach your goals, you must be calm and analytical so that you can accurately diagnose your problems, design a plan that will get you around them, and do what is necessary to push through to results. Then you will have to look at the new results you achieve and go through the process again. To evolve quickly, you will have to do this fast and continuously, setting your goals successively higher. You will need to do all 5 steps well in order to be successful, and you must do them one at a time and in that order. For example, when setting goals, just set goals. Don't think about how you will achieve them or what you will do if something goes wrong. When you are diagnosing your problems, don't think about how you will solve them, just diagnose them. Blurring the steps leads to suboptimal outcomes because it interferes with uncovering the true problems. Recognize your 2 barriers. The 2 biggest barriers to good decision-making are your ego and your blind spots. Together, they make it very difficult for you to objectively see what's true about you and your circumstances and to make the best possible decisions by getting the most out of others. If you can understand how the machine that is the human brain works, you can understand why these barriers exist and how to adjust your behavior to make yourself happier, more effective, and better at interacting with others. A. Understand your ego barrier. When I refer to your ego barrier, I'm referring to the subliminal defense mechanisms that make it hard for you to accept your mistakes and weaknesses. Your deepest-seated needs and fears, such as your need to be loved and the fear of losing love, the need to survive and the fear of not surviving, the need to be important and the fear of not mattering, reside in primitive parts of your brain, such as the amygdala, which are structures in your temporal lobe that process emotions. Because these areas of your brain are not accessible to your conscious awareness, it is virtually impossible for you to understand what they want and how they control you. They oversimplify things and react instinctively. They crave praise and respond to criticism as an attack, even when the higher-level parts of the brain understand that constructive criticism is good for you. They make you defensive, especially when it comes to the subject of how good you are. At the same time, higher-level consciousness resides in your neocortex, more specifically in the part called the prefrontal cortex. This is the most distinctively human feature of your brain. Relative to the rest of the brain, it's larger in humans than in most other species. This is where you experience the conscious awareness of decision-making, the so-called executive function, as well as the application of logic and reasoning. B. Your two yous fight to control you. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, though your higher-level you is not aware of your lower-level you. This conflict is universal. If you pay attention, you can actually see when the different parts of a person's brain are arguing with each other. For example, when someone gets angry with himself, his prefrontal cortex is sparring with his amygdala. In other words, his upper-level self is battling with his lower-level self. When someone asks, "Why did I let myself eat all that cake?" the answer is, because the lower-level you won out over the thoughtful higher-level you. Once you understand how your logical, conscious you and your emotional, subconscious you fight with each other, you can imagine what it's like when your two yous deal with other people and their two thems. It's a mess. Those lower-level selves are like attack dogs. They want to fight even when their higher-level selves want to figure things out. This is very confusing because you and the people you are dealing with typically don't even know these lower-level beasts exist, never mind that they're trying to hijack everyone's behavior. Let's look at what tends to happen when someone disagrees with you and asks you to explain your thinking. Because you're programmed to view such challenges as attacks, you get angry, even though it would be more logical for you to be interested in the other person's perspective, especially if they are intelligent. When you try to explain your behavior, sometimes your explanations don't make any sense. That's because your lower-level you is trying to speak through your upper-level you. Your deep-seated hidden motivations are in control, so it's impossible for you to logically explain what you're doing. Even the most intelligent people generally behave this way, and it's tragic. To be effective, you must not let your need to be right be more important than your need to find out what's true. If you're too proud of what you know or how good you are at something, you will learn less, make inferior decisions, and fall short of your potential. C. Understand your blind spot barrier. In addition to your ego barrier, you, and everyone else, also have blind spots, areas where your way of thinking prevents you from seeing things accurately. Just as we all have different ranges for hearing pitch and seeing colors, we have different ranges for seeing and understanding things. We see things in our own way. For example, some people naturally see big pictures and miss small details, while others naturally see details and miss big pictures. Some are linear thinkers, while others are more lateral, and so on. Naturally, people can't appreciate what they can't see. A person who can't identify patterns and synthesize doesn't know what it's like to see patterns and synthesize any more than a colorblind person knows what it's like to see color. These differences in how our brains work are much less apparent than differences in how our bodies work. Colorblind people eventually find out that they're colorblind, whereas most people never see or understand the ways in which their ways of thinking are making them blind. To make it even harder, we don't like to see ourselves or others as having blind spots, even though we all have them. When you point out someone's psychological weaknesses, it's generally about as well received as if you pointed out their physical weaknesses. If you're like most people, you have no clue about how other people see things and aren't good at seeking to understand what they're thinking because you're too preoccupied with telling them what you yourself think is correct. In other words, you're closed-minded. You presume too much. This closed-mindedness is terribly costly. It causes you to miss out on all sorts of wonderful possibilities and dangerous threats that other people might be showing you. And it blocks criticism that can be constructive and even life-saving. The end result of these two barriers is that parties in disagreements typically remain convinced that they're right, and often end up angry at each other. This is illogical and leads to suboptimal decision-making. After all, when two people reach opposite conclusions, someone must be wrong. Shouldn't you want to make sure that that someone isn't you? This failure to benefit from others' thinking doesn't just occur when disagreements arise. It occurs when people encounter problems that they're trying to solve. When trying to figure things out, most people spin in their own heads instead of taking in all the wonderful thinking available to them. As a result, they continually run toward what they see and keep crashing into what they are blind to until the crashing leads them to adapt. Those who adapt do so by A, teaching their brains to work in a way that doesn't come naturally. For example, the creative person learns to become organized through discipline and practice. B, they use compensating mechanisms. For example, programmed reminders. And or C, they learn to rely on the help of others who are strong where they are weak. Differences in thinking can be symbiotic and complementary instead of disruptive. For example, the lateral approach to thinking that is common among creative people can lead them to be unreliable, while more linear thinkers are often more dependable. Some people are more emotional, while others are more logical, and so on. None of these individuals would be able to succeed at any kind of complex project without having the help of others who have complementary strengths. Aristotle defined tragedy as a terrible outcome arising from a person's fatal flaw, a flaw that, had it been fixed, instead would have led to a wonderful outcome. In my opinion, these two barriers, ego and blind spots, are the fatal flaws that keep intelligent, hardworking people from living up to their potentials. Would you like to learn how to get past them? You can do it. Everybody can. Here's how.
Principle 3.4. Remember to reflect when you experience pain. Remember this: the pain is all in your head. If you want to evolve, you need to go where the problems and the pain are. By confronting the pain, you will see more clearly the paradoxes and problems you face. Reflecting on them and resolving them will give you wisdom. The harder the pain and the challenge, the better. Because these moments of pain are so important, you shouldn't rush through them. Stay in them and explore them so you can build a foundation for improvement. Embracing your failures and confronting the pain they cause you and others is the first step toward genuine improvement. It is why confession precedes forgiveness in many societies. Psychologists call this hitting bottom. If you keep doing this, you will convert the pain of facing your mistakes and weaknesses into pleasures and get to the other side, as I explained in Embrace Reality and Deal with It. A. Be self-reflective and make sure your people are self-reflective. When there is pain, the animal instinct is fight or flight. Calm yourself down and reflect instead. The pain you are feeling is due to things being in conflict. Maybe you've come up against a terrible reality, such as the death of a friend, and are unable to accept it. Maybe you've been forced to acknowledge a weakness that challenges the idea you'd had of yourself. If you can think clearly about what's behind it, you will learn more about what reality is like and how to better deal with it. Self-reflectiveness is the quality that most differentiates those who evolve quickly from those who don't. Remember, pain plus reflection equals progress. Trust in radical truth and radical transparency. Understanding what is true is essential for success, and being radically transparent about everything, including mistakes and weaknesses, helps create the understanding that leads to improvements. That's not just a theory. We have put this into practice at Bridgewater for over 40 years, so we know how it works. But like most things in life, being radically truthful and transparent has cons as well as pros, which I will describe as accurately as possible in this chapter. Being radically truthful and transparent with your colleagues and expecting your colleagues to be the same with you ensures that important issues are apparent instead of hidden. It also enforces good behavior and good thinking, because when you have to explain yourself, everyone can openly assess the merits of your logic. If you're handling things well, radical transparency will make that clear, and if you're handling things badly, radical transparency will make that clear as well. So it helps to maintain high standards. Radical truth and radical transparency are fundamental to having a real idea meritocracy. The more people can see what is happening, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the more effective they are at deciding the appropriate ways of handling things. This approach is also invaluable for training. Learning is compounded and accelerated when everyone has the opportunity to hear what everyone else is thinking. As a leader, you will get the feedback essential for your learning and for the continual improvement of the organization's decision-making rules. And seeing firsthand what's happening and why builds trust and allows people to make the independent assessments of the evidence that a functioning idea meritocracy requires.